Hey there, everyone. This is Gregg Schutze for ReadyForTheDraft.com, and this is the Ready for the Draft podcast, Bowl Edition. That's right, it's bowl season. Happy holidays to me. This is one of my favorite times of year, getting to sit down, watch all the bowl games. I never miss a bowl game. I remember as a kid growing up, watching every single bowl game, and things haven't changed even today. We're going to take a look at the first week's worth of bowl games in this podcast, and then a couple of days later I'm going to put another podcast together to take a look at the remaining games. So we'll look at all 40 bowl games. We're going to take a look at some of the matchups to watch when we're talking about the draft eligible prospects. My goal is to get you ready for the NFL draft, which is set to begin in April in Las Vegas, Nevada. I want you to be prepared. I want you to know who these draft prospects are going to be, not just the Joe Burrows, the Chase Youngs, but I want you to make sure that you're also, not forgetting about the guys that are going to be those sleeper picks on day 2, day 3, some of those priority free agents as well. So we're going to take a look at these matchups. Who are the guys that you really want to key in on during the bowl season? So without further ado, why don't we go ahead and just jump straight into the bowls? And the first bowl game on Friday, December 20th, Buffalo taking on Charlotte in the Bahamas Bowl. And I'll tell you what, the Buffalo Bulls under Lance Leipold, 7-5 on the year, back-to-back bowl games, and they're really led by a two-headed monster at running back, Jarrett Patterson. He's kind of the bell cow for them. 5'9", 185 pounds, over 1,600 yards on the ground, 17 touchdowns. Also 13 receptions on the year as well. This is the kid who runs with tremendous balance. I think he runs through contact, pretty shifty between the tackles, has a burst on the outside as well. He came in as a freshman. He and Kevin Marks, the other running back there, they are they're going to give you that dose on the ground. And that's really what you're going to see from Buffalo. And Kevin Marks eclipsing the 1,000-yard mark as well, 8 touchdowns. To go with that, 6 foot, 200 pounds, a bigger back, but he runs with a little bit more power. I think Jarrett Patterson, the lateral quickness, I think that's one of the things that you see, the vision to see the cutback lanes. I think Jarrett Patterson's going to be one of those names to watch out for if he has another big year. He's already talking about 1,600 yards on the ground. That's among the nation's best. If he has another year like that, we could anticipate seeing Jarrett Patterson potentially coming out after his junior year. He's one of those guys to really keep an eye out for. So if you haven't seen Jarrett Patterson play, tune into that bowl game. Now, when we're talking about Charlotte, on offense, you've got Ben LeMay. Ben LeMay, 5'9", 215 pounds, back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons, 54 receptions in his career as well. Went over the 1,000-yard mark, as I said, just 1,027 yards, 9 touchdowns on the year. Big, thick back. He's only 5'9", but he's well put together. Another guy who runs through contact. This is going to be a fun game on the ground. Now with Charlotte, as I mentioned, 7-5. Their first bowl game, first bowl appearance ever. Will Healy taking them to the bowl game. And, Charlotte, when you think of Charlotte, I mentioned Ben LeMay, the running back, but I'll tell you, if you haven't gotten to see Alex Highsmith, you're in for a treat. 6'4", 242 pounds, kind of a defensive end, outside linebacker hybrid. I think he's best suited as a 3-4 outside linebacker at the next level. Not only is he the third leading tackler on the team, but he's also a leading sack artist. 21.5 tackles for loss, 15 sacks, 3 pass breakups, 2 forced fumbles. Here's the thing that's so impressive about Alex Highsmith. In 2018, 16.5 tackles for loss, just 3 sacks. This was a guy who was living in opposing backfields, but wasn't really getting to the quarterback. He was making plays behind the line, affecting the runs, really using his hands well, explosive bursts coming off the football as well. And he really showed an ability to get home against the quarterback in 2019, developing more of those pass rush moves, coming off the edge, using his hands even better. Using some of those secondary moves as well. He's not just the guy who's going to attack you on the outside. I thought he got better core strength to be able to dip and rip and really get through the offensive tackles blocks. And then that repertoire, like I said, not only using his hands, using some arm over techniques, spin moves back to the inside, crossing the face of the tackle and really getting that good inside rush. Alex Highsmith, high motor guy, and he's going to make Buffalo, the Buffalo quarterback, Van Treese, going to make his life miserable in the backfield. Now for Buffalo on defense, you've got Ladarius Mack, that's Khalil Mack's little brother, 6'1", 240-pound senior, 10.5 tackles for loss, 6 sacks, 3 forced fumbles. He flies around to the football. And then you're going to have Taylor Riggins, the defensive end, 6'2", 255 pounds. He's only a junior, 8.5 sacks to lead the team. He'll be getting after the quarterback there, and they'll have the job of trying to get after Ben LeMay. But what I'm really interested in is not only Alex Highsmith getting after the quarterback, but I want to see what he can do against the run as well. If he's squaring up Jarrett Patterson or Kevin Marks behind the line of scrimmage, is he going to be able to bring them down in the open field? That's really what I'm looking forward to. Tune into that Bahamas Bowl. And, I think it'll be an interesting contest. I think at the end of the day, I think Buffalo just has a little bit too much firepower, especially on the ground with the Marks and Patterson. I think Buffalo ends up winning it, but I think it's going to be a lot closer than people expect. The other game on the 20th is going to be the Frisco Bowl. That's Utah State versus Kent State. Now, Utah State, kind of an interesting program. Gary Anderson, his second stint as head coach, he was there for 4 years from 2009 to 2012 while they were in the WAC. Obviously now they're in the Mountain West, 3 straight bowl games. And you look at them, Jordan Love, the quarterback, is really the guy that everyone is going to be focused in on. He was arrested for marijuana use and possession, but he's a kid who's still going to play in the game, and he's already declared for the draft. 6'4", 225 pounds. And when you look at him as a sophomore, 64% completion percentage, over 3,500 yards, 32 touchdowns, just 6 interceptions. Everyone looked at Jordan Love and said, this is going to be the guy. Everyone's looking for that next quarterback. Who's going to be the breakout? Who's going to be the Kyler Murray, the guy that's really going to elevate his game to the next level as a junior and really take the world by storm? And Jordan Love was really going to be that guy. This year, though, 60.6% completion percentage, just over 3,000 yards, 17 touchdowns, but 16 interceptions. And here's the thing with Jordan Love. You watch him play, and he looks phenomenal. Definitely looks the part, has a tremendous arm, very athletic, can get out on the move, and square his shoulders to the target, and can be a playmaker in space. Will take off and run the ball whenever he can as well. But here's the deal with Jordan Love. I really believe that he needed to come back for one more year. And I think the big reason why is I don't know that he necessarily sees the entire field. He got baited a few times by defensive backs, making some ill-advised throws. And, he didn't have the benefit of a receiving core that, was, I guess, had quite a few drops. But it was really the biggest thing for me watching him was just the inconsistency. He'd have a perfect throw, the perfect touch on a throw, but then he would try to fit the ball into traffic, wouldn't see the safety coming over the top, wouldn't see a linebacker underneath, corners working inside, working outside in, and a lot of times he missed that as well. Throwing back across his body, late over the middle. Just a lot of things, with him that I thought Jordan Love needed to shore up. Now, here's the thing. The athleticism, the athletic ability, he has the potential and the talent, and that's why he's going to get drafted in probably the first 40 or 50 picks. Is he going to be a first rounder? There may be a team that's out there that's going to need a quarterback. You figure Cincinnati's probably going to go with Joe Burrow. Is Miami going to take Tua? Are the Chargers, potentially Carolina, Tampa Bay going to go after Justin Herbert? There are teams that are out there that are going to need a quarterback, and there's a chance Jordan Love could be a first rounder this year. I just wish he would have come back for one more year. I think get some of that polished together. He could have been the number 1 quarterback taken in next year's draft. But he is coming out, and at the end of the day, we'll see where things lie. I thought Sam Darnold should have come back for one more year at USC, And we see what he's doing there with the Jets. Kind of an up and down start to his career. Hopefully, in the right situation. That's really what I'm hoping for Jordan Love at this point. Utah State going to be without David Woodward, their inside linebacker. Lower body injury, out for the year. He's also declared for the draft. 6'7", 235 pounds. Just played in 7 games this year. Also battled some injuries as a freshman. Only played in 7 games, but as a sophomore, 134 tackles, 12 and a half for loss, 5 sacks, 2 interceptions. As a junior, like I said, only played in 7 games, but 93 tackles, 5 going for loss, couple of sacks. A couple of pass breakups, 4 forced fumbles. Very instinctive, plays well in space. He's a guy I think I want to see how he tests. How fast is this kid going to be? Is he going to be someone that's running in the 4.5s, 4.6 range, or is he going to be in the 4.7, 4.8? I think if he can run in that 4.5, 4.6 range, he's one of those guys who I think is going to see his draft stock continue to elevate because he is instinctive. He can play in space. He is more of the new age linebacker, and he's playing on the inside too. And there's room for him to rise up draft boards, I think. Then Tipa Nalai, the 6'5", 235-pound senior defensive end, outside linebacker hybrid. I think, he's so lean right now. I think he's more of a 34 outside linebacker. Started his career at TCU. 26 and a half tackles for loss, 19 and a half sacks in his career. Really the breakout year was his junior season, 13 and a half tackles for loss, 10 sacks. He's going to be the guy that's going to be getting after Dustin Crum, the junior quarterback there for Kent State. Now, Kent State, man, second year head coach Sean Lewis, after a 2-10 record in his first year, goes 6-6. This is the first bowl game since the 2012 Go Daddy Bowl under Darrell Hazel. And then really the only other bowl game that Kent State's been to was a 1972 Tangerine Bowl. So Kent State, not really familiar with the bowl games, and I think Sean Lewis has done a tremendous job bringing this team there. But if you haven't seen Dustin Crum play, he's a lot of fun to watch. 6'3", 201 pounds, 68.2% completion percentage, over 2,300 yards passing, 18 touchdowns, just 2 interceptions. Also, his 560 yards on the ground led the team. So when we talk about, Tipa Nalai coming off the edge, really going to have to pressure Dustin Crum, get him uncomfortable in the pocket, but they also have to have a spy on him, and that's really where David Woodward would have come into play to keep an eye on Dustin Crum. When you're talking about Kent State coming on defense, the Golden Flash, the corner, Jamal Parker is fun to watch. He's 5'8", 177 pounds. If he were to play at the next level, he'd be in the nickel. A guy who's likely not going to be drafted, but I think he'll at least get a shot, and a look at an NFL team as a potentially a priority free agent. This is a kid who 28 pass breakups, 9 interceptions in his career, 58 tackles, 3 interceptions, 9 pass breakups in 2019. And then one other name for you to look out for as well is Manning Lawrence Birch, 6 foot, 195 pounds, kind of a linebacker safety hybrid, leading the team in tackles with 94, 4 sacks, 5.5 tackles for loss. He's one of those guys who plays all over the field for the Golden Flash, and again, leads the team in tackles. He's going to be the guy that's flying around, making some plays in the running game. And then Jamal Parker is really going to be tasked with trying to shut down Jordan Love and that passing attack. I think at the end of the day, I think what Kent State has done is remarkable, getting to be bowl eligible. But Jordan Love, there's just too much there. I think Utah State ends up winning this game going away. So now Saturday, December 21st, we've got a full slate of games. The first one is going to be Central Michigan and San Diego State. Central Michigan getting there, went to the MAC championship game against Miami of Ohio under Jim McElwain, and a tremendous turnaround there for Jim McElwain. Didn't win the MAC. Miami of Ohio ended up winning that game, but like I said, just tremendous job by him. And he's taking on a San Diego State team with Rocky Long. And I'll tell you what Rocky Long's been able to do. 10 bowl appearances all under Rocky Long. I think that's tremendous. And the New Mexico Bowl, you're gonna hopefully Juwan Washington's gonna get to play. He's questionable with an injury, 5'7", 190 pounds. As a junior, just under 1,000 yards, 10 touchdowns on the year so far this year. Just 500 yards on the ground, a couple of touchdowns, 17 receptions. He's a dynamic returner. He's really a lot of fun to watch. That's really what I was hoping to see there for San Diego State. Defensively, they've got Kavaya Tazino, 6 foot, 235 pound inside linebacker, 285 tackles in his career, 30 for loss, 14 sacks. He's really the guy that is the playmaker in the middle of that defense. Very instinctive. He's the guy that's the leader. He sets the tone. And, he's going to be that guy that's going to be flying around all over the field. Luke Barku, second year player there for San Diego State, 6'1", 175-pound senior. This year, 8 interceptions, 16 pass breakups. I haven't even had a chance to watch San Diego State play this year, and so I really haven't gotten a chance to study Luke Barku, and I'm really looking forward to doing that because he's among the nation leaders in both pass breakups and interceptions. When you're talking about 24 total passes defended, you're talking about a guy who's ranking among the FBS's top defensive back. So I'll be really curious to see what he does. Tarek Thompson, the safety, was a freshman All-American a couple of years ago, 6 foot, 190 pounds. A guy who, 185 tackles in his career, also 9 interceptions, 20 pass breakups. So he's a guy who can play in the box. He can drop into coverage, plays well over the top, does a little bit of everything. And then Darren Hall. 6 foot, 180 pound sophomore, another guy who makes a lot of plays all over the field, 16 pass breakups to his credit, kind of a safety corner. He's going to be another guy to keep an eye on. San Diego State, they produce a lot of corners and safeties. DeMonte Casey was the latest one that comes to mind. He's going to be one of those guys that I think a lot of teams are going to be wanting to watch. And when I say that, he was a guy that really stepped out, really played well, really made a lot of plays on the football, and he's having himself a nice NFL career. I think Luke Barku could potentially be that same type of player. So for Central Michigan, defensively, I think probably one of their best pro prospects is going to probably be Sean Adesanya, the outside linebacker, defensive end hybrid. He's because of his size, I really anticipate him playing as a 34 outside linebacker at the next level. Really a guy, he was a transfer that came in there and started playing for the Chippewas. And, this was the first year that he really got a chance to put everything together. A little inconsistent, not always able to get home and make plays on the football, but a guy who's really known to be a sack artist. And I think he's going to be somebody more, when you would think of him, he's more of a pass rush specialist more than anything else. Started his career at Illinois, transferred to Central Michigan after the 2017 season. This year, 15 and a half tackles for loss, 7 sacks, a couple of pass breakups as well, 6'3", 240 pounds. I think he'll get a shot just because he knows how to get home, knows how to get to the quarterback, knows how to make plays behind the line of scrimmage. I think a lot of the workouts are really what's going to make or break things for Sean Adesanya. I think at the end of the day, San Diego State is just going to be too much for the Chippewas. But again, Jim McElwain, hats off to him. On a great year, a great turnaround there at Central Michigan. The Cure Bowl. Liberty, the Flames, taking on Georgia Southern, and the Flames, I'll tell you what, 7-5, under Hugh Freeze, finally getting to go to a bowl game, in their second year in the FBS. Just really remarkable what Liberty's been able to do in such a short period of time. And they've got a bona fide stud on the offensive side of the football. Antonio Gandy Golden, know that name, 6'4", 220 pounds, came in as a junior, caught over 70 passes for over 1,000 yards and 10 touchdowns. This year, even better, 74 catches, 1,333 yards and 9 touchdowns. Tremendous length. I think that's one of the things that you see. The catch radius, you put the ball anywhere near this guy and he's going to go up and get it. He wins the 50-50 balls, times his jumps really well. Excellent leaper, gets late separation. That's one of the things that I think is really impressive for him is even when the corner looks to be in phase and be right there, he's going to separate. He's going to either extend that arm or he's going to, really just look to, as he's leaping and jumping for the football, he's going to try to angle and contort his body to get away from that defensive back and make a play on the ball. He has surprising speed for his size at 6'4". I think teams are going to worry about whether or not he can separate. So really, you want to see what he's going to run in the 40 at the combine. This is a kid who's going to get invited to the combine, by the way. And, I think he's going to show up well. This is a very deep wide receiver class. You have as many as 7 or 8 wide receivers who could end up going in the first round. Because of that, Gandy Golden could slip and could fall into the third round, but man, he's not getting out of day 2. Let's not get that twisted. This is a guy who I think could end up starting very soon at the next level. He's the guy to keep an eye out for. The guy that's throwing him the football is Steven Buckshot Calvert, 6'2", 180 pounds. A guy who hasn't completed 60% of his passes. 47 touchdowns with 23 interceptions. Really cut down on the interceptions as a senior. Still only completed 58% of his passes. Just under 3,400 yards, 26 touchdowns, just 5 interceptions. He's going to be trying to get the ball to Gandy Golden, but I'll tell you what, that matchup that I really want to see is Gandy Golden taking on Kindle Vildor of Georgia Southern. 5'11", 190 pound senior. This is a guy who has tremendous ball skills. He's instinctive. Always seems to be in the right position at the right time. He's has 8 interceptions, 23 pass breakups in his career. Just an intelligent corner. Doesn't have ideal size, but this is one of the things. He's going up against a receiver who has 5 inches on him and has tremendous length. I really want to see what he can do. If he's in phase and he's able to, attack the catch point and really make life difficult for Antonio Gandy Golden, that's going to go a long way towards NFL teams really being able to see if he can be a shutdown corner on the outside. Is he limited to playing inside? Is he going to be a nickel? What are you really going to see out of him? I think this game, that matchup is really going to be huge to really get an idea of what you're going to see there. Now, the other corner, Monquavian Brinson, 5'11", 190 pounds, another guy who has tremendous ball skills. 6 interceptions, 34 pass breakups in his career, and he's playing opposite Vildor. He's going to see a lot more of those passes coming his way. But look, Georgia Southern, they've got 2 really talented corners. And Georgia Southern, let's see, what do I have here for them? 3 of the last 6 years, back-to-back bowl games. They're really moving in the right direction. And they're led offensively by Shai Wertz, the junior quarterback. Not tremendous in terms of the accuracy, 52% completion percentage, does have 9 touchdowns, no interceptions, but it's really the ground game. He's over 2,000 yards on the ground, 23 total touchdowns. This is a guy who makes plays, just tremendous in space. And he's one of those guys, when you look at him, he could be a quarterback, he could be a running back at the next level. He's not a tremendous passer, but the athlete, I think that's really what's going to potentially give him a shot at the next level. But he's a junior, so he'll be back for one more year. Same can't be said for Wesley Kennedy, the 5'10", 180 pound senior. No, actually, he's a junior as well. Let's see. Through 8 games, 764 yards on the ground, 10 touchdowns. He took over for Matt Breida. If that name sounds familiar, he's the starter there for the 49ers. And, Matt Breida, man, I don't know that Georgia Southern's going to be able to duplicate what he's done, what he did for that program. Over 1,600 yards as a sophomore there. And just really was just a tremendous runner, tremendous, for that program, really putting them on the map there in Georgia. But Wesley Kennedy is one of those guys. I think he's filled in, filled in rather well. They're known for the running game more so than the passing, and you're going to see a lot of different backs, a lot of different looks. Wesley Kennedy is a talented back and somebody to keep an eye on. What they're going to go up against is a guy by the name of Jesse Lemonier. He's 6'3", 240 pounds, 27 tackles for loss, 18 and a half sacks in his career, including 8.5 this past season. He's an outside linebacker, I think, at the next level. Someone who I think should deserve a look. When you're talking about these guys, who are rushing the quarterback, if nothing else, if you're just a situational pass rusher, there is a chance, there is a spot for you at the next level. You may just be a situational guy. You may be only coming in on third downs as you continue to develop your skill set. But, Lemonier has a knack for getting home and getting to the quarterback. He might be one of those developmental prospects that a team takes a shot at. Boca Raton Bowl seems to be a really not just a virtual home game. It is a home game. It's played in FAU Stadium. So Florida Atlantic taking on SMU. Lane Kiffin, really the swan song for him. They're at Florida Atlantic. But we're first going to talk about SMU. The Mustangs 10-2. Sonny Dykes, taking them to a bowl game yet again. And they're led by their quarterback, Shane Buechele. Now, Shane Buechele, first year there at SMU, transferred in from Texas. Sam Ellinger was not going to relinquish the starting job, so Shane Buechele moving in. And, if you look at what he did, 63% passer, let's see, over 3,600 yards, 33 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. I thought he threw a really pretty deep ball. That's one of the things that when you turn on the film and you watch him play, obviously you have James Prochet and Reggie Roberson, talented receivers that he's throwing the football to, but he had a really nice deep ball. He did a really good job pushing the ball down the field, throws with good accuracy outside the numbers, and that's rare when you're talking about a lot of the college players in the college game. A lot of guys, they'll either they'll throw for tremendous arm, but they'll lack the touch, or vice versa. I think Shane Buechele has a little bit of both, and that's one of those things that I really want to see what he can do and how he's going to develop next year, because he could be one of those quarterbacks that we're talking about in the 2021 draft when it's all said and done. Let's see. Running back, Xavier Jones, 5'11", 205. And I'll tell you what, this is a guy who, to me, is one of those sleepers, one of those guys who's kind of flying under the radar. Again, 5'11", 205. This past year, over 1,200 yards on the ground, 21 touchdowns. So he has a nose for the end zone, 19 receptions as well. I look at him, he's one of those guys who I think is going to make a better pro than he even was a college player. I think he has that versatility. He's a guy who can run between the tackles, has some speed on the outside. I think he might be a little quicker than he is fast, but I liken him to a guy like Tony Pollard. Tony Pollard is a rookie there for Dallas, filling in for Ezekiel Elliott at times. And you see the flashes. You see what he's capable of. And I think Xavier Jones is going to be someone, he'll be a day 3 pick. He'll probably be a 5th rounder, but I think he's one of those guys who can step in and really start making some plays. James Prochet is a guy, I think he's a stud. He can be that third receiver on your team, possibly even a number 2, 6 foot, 193 pounds, just a polished wideout, runs tremendous routes. He's one of those guys. I kind of liken him a little bit to Terry McLaurin with the way that he runs routes, able to get open and separate from his man so quick in and out of his cuts. Tremendous catch radius for a guy who's only 6 feet tall, but the body control along the sidelines. He does a little bit of everything. Just so smooth. Over 3,800 yards in his career, 38 touchdowns. With this draft class, though, he's somebody, to me, I look at him, and I think of Cooper Kupp. And I look at what James Prochet is able to do because of the ball skills, because of his ability to attack the ball in the air, because of his ability to really, he's not very, he's uncoverable at times. He's so quick off the line. He's able to beat guys off the ball, and that's really what Cooper Kupp was able to demonstrate at the Senior Bowl. Cooper Kupp, had a historic career there for Eastern Washington, but a lot of people weren't really expecting. He only ran a 4.6 40 at the combine, and I don't expect James Prochet to blow our socks off when he runs the 40. But watch him in the Senior Bowl and really see what James Prochet can do. He's somebody to me, I don't think corners are going to have an easy time with him, as he releases off the line of scrimmage. And he's somebody who should be a 3rd-round pick. He'll probably fall to the 4th or 5th round because of the depth in this receiver class. He's somebody who could get lost in that shuffle, but I'm telling you, I think James Prochet is going to have a nice NFL career. The other wide receiver that I mentioned, Reggie Roberson, questionable for the game, has a lower body injury. His 2nd year there at SMU after he transferred in. And let's see, over 1,600 yards and 12 touchdowns in his career. And, I hope he gets to play. That's just going to be another weapon for Shane Buechele. And when we talk about Buechele, just getting back to him, really quickly, Jared Goff, his college coach was Sonny Dykes, who happens to be coaching Shane Buechele. And so I look at that. I can see some parallels to their games. I think the eye discipline, being able to look off the safety, hold him in place, and then be able to get back to his receiver. You see some of those things out of Shane Buechele, some of those same traits. And I'll be curious to see if what Dykes can do with Buechele in his senior season. Now, getting back to the positional players there for SMU. If you look defense, Patrick Nelson, the safety, we talked about him previously in last podcast. 6 foot, 216 pounds, and a guy who just flies around to the football. 79 tackles, but really what's impressive is his ability to get home to the quarterback. 16 and a half tackles for loss, 12 and a half sacks. That's rare when you're talking about a safety. He plays well in the box. Not a guy who makes a ton of plays on the football, just have 1 interception and 1 pass breakup in 2019, but he's definitely somebody who's going to be a box safety, probably be another linebacker that can play downhill. And, the fact that he can get home and get to the quarterback and bring him down, sack him, you can imagine that that's going to intrigue teams at the next level. And I think he's going to get a look because he knows how to get after the quarterback. Now, the Owls, Florida Atlantic with Mr. Kiffin, you look at them, they're 10-3 on the year. Kiffin took them to a bowl game in 2 of their 3 years. And when you talk about them, 16 years in the FBS, Howard Schnellenberger took them to 2 bowls in the first 8 years of the program, and now we have Kiffin taking him to a bowl game in 2 of his 3 years there. Offensively, Harrison Bryant, the John Mackey Award winner, top tight end, 6'5", 240 pounds, over 1,000 yards receiving this year, 7 touchdowns. Just a tremendous athlete. I think he's a really good route runner. He can separate from the linebacker, poses mismatches there with the linebackers because he's so much quicker in and out of his breaks. And then obviously the size mismatch going up against defensive backs. I think Harrison Bryant could challenge the likes of Albert Owe-Bunam and Jared Pinkney and Bryson Hopkins to be the top tight end in this year's draft. If you look at them, you're talking about defensively, Achilles Leroy, the linebacker, 5'11", 235 pounds, kind of undersized, but 101 tackles, 13 and a half for loss, 7.5 sacks, 4 forced fumbles, makes a lot of plays behind the line of scrimmage, very active. Rashad Smith, the outside linebacker, 6'1", 220 pounds, just under 300 tackles in his career, 31 tackles for loss, 11 and a half sacks, 5 interceptions, 7 pass breakups, does a little bit of everything. That's one of the things that is intriguing about him is that, I don't think he necessarily is exceptional in any one area, but he does a lot of the little things and, just does a little bit of everything for that program. And I think he's going to be someone who, probably won't get drafted, but he'll be a priority free agent. Teams will at least want to take a look at him and see what he can do. I'll be curious to see what he runs in the 40 as well. I think that's going to go a long way towards his draft stock. And then a junior, a transfer from Georgia Tech, Miko Dotson, 5'11", 195 pounds. Nobody's talking about this guy. 9 interceptions to his credit. He's only a junior, doesn't even start for the Owls, but 9 interceptions. The ball skills there are uncanny for this guy. He's somebody who is, I'm really going to be curious to see what he can do there at Florida Atlantic next season. Under Willie Taggart, who after Florida State not really working out, he gets a chance to coach again in Florida there at Florida Atlantic with Kiffin, Lane Kiffin moving on to Mississippi. So that should be interesting. Now we're moving on to the Camellia Bowl, and you've got Florida International taking on Arkansas State. So Florida International, FIU, 6-6 on the year. Butch Davis taking them to another bowl game. Let's see. Butch has actually taken them to 3 bowl games. They've only been to a couple of others, and that was really Mario Cristobal when he was the head coach. And Mario Cristobal, obviously now, what he's doing there at Oregon, taking the Ducks to the Rose Bowl, just missing out on the college football playoff. Had they not lost to Arizona State, they may be playing in the playoff. But Mario Cristobal really started things there at FIU. Butch Davis continuing to push the Panthers along. Just 16 years in FBS. And, I think Butch Davis really has that program moving in the right direction. Now, James Morgan is their quarterback, 6'4", 213 pounds, transferred in from Bowling Green. Career 57% passer, but he did hit 61% this year. Let's see, over 4,900 yards. I'm sorry. Let's see. That's in his 2 years at FIU. So 61.7% passing, 49.75 in terms of his passing yards, 39 touchdowns, just 10 interceptions. This year, 13 touchdowns, just 3 interceptions. Really, I look at him and I think James Morgan is more of a game manager than anything else. Doesn't make a ton of mistakes, but he's not one of those quarterbacks who's necessarily going to win it for you either. Let's see, if I were to look at them on defense, the prospect I'm looking at is Sage Lewis, 6'1", 240-pound inside linebacker. And look, as in 2018, 124 tackles, 8 pass breakups. Really wanted to see what he was going to do this year. Just 81 tackles on the year, 3 interceptions, 3 pass breakups. But he's an instinctive playmaker, plays sideline to sideline. And so he's one of those guys. I think a lot of the postseason workouts are really going to be key for him. What's he going to run in the 40? What are you going to see in some of those other drills? That's really what, if you run that 40 time and you get that down low enough, then teams at least are going to want to go back and take a look at more game film. And I think Sage Lewis is going to be one of those guys trying to get after the quarterback there at Arkansas State. And I'll tell you what, they're going to be throwing the football to Omar Bayless, 6'3", 207-pound senior wideout. And in his first 3 seasons with the Red Wolves, 83 receptions, 1,111 yards, and 9 touchdowns. As a senior, 84 receptions, over 1,400 yards, which is 17.5 average, and 16 touchdowns. So Omar Bayless just having a breakout year. He's a big wideout. I think he's going to have a chance at the next level again. Another draft class that has so many receivers out there. He's going to fall. He'll be probably a late day 3 guy, but he's a bigger receiver, has that nice catch radius, very adept at finding the holes in the zone, a weapon who's not afraid to go over the middle either. He'll make the difficult catch. I like Omar Bayless. I want to see him get a chance at the next level. I hope he's going to go to an NFL team that needs receivers. He could be that 4th or 5th receiver. It'll be interesting to see what happens. I was a big fan of Kenny Golladay when he came out of Northern Illinois, and I think about some of those group of five receivers. I think Omar Bayless could be a similar in a similar position. Now Arkansas State, they're 7-5 on the year. They've gone to 9 bowl games in their career, or in their total. When you think about it, you got Hugh Freeze, Gus Malzahn, Brian Harsin, and then here's Blake Anderson coming in. 6 years there at the helm at Arkansas State, taking him to a bowl game, and Blake Anderson, really a tough year for him. His wife lost the battle to cancer. And really, I thought it was an emotional and really uplifting thing to watch his team respond to him when he came back. He was out for a time, and when he came back to the team, the outpouring of love, I thought that was really special. And he's one of those guys that you really want to pull for. When we look at them defensively, Darion Johnson is really the playmaker there for them. Played at Boise State, 6 foot, 205 pounds, really a safety. And, when you look at him, over 100 tackles, 7.5 sacks, 7.5 tackles for loss, an interception to his credit. Has over 18 tackles for loss in his career, 251 total tackles. A guy who plays well in the box, plays a lot behind the line of scrimmage. He's going to be one of those guys that's going to be getting after James Morgan. I think at the end of the day with this, FIU, they've been in a lot of tough games, a lot of close games, and James Morgan throwing the football. I think FIU ends up winning this one, but it's going to be a close game. Boise State and Washington playing in the Las Vegas Bowl. Now, who would have really thought that these two programs would be playing in the Las Vegas Bowl? I think you'd be expecting both of these programs to be playing in much bigger bowl settings. What's interesting is Chris Peterson taking on his old program. He's stepping down. Jimmy Lake, the defensive coordinator, is going to be taking over the program. Look, they're 7-5 this year. And when you look at it, in 2015 they were 7-6. Then they go 12-2, 10-3, and 10-4. Under Chris Peterson, and with Washington, obviously you talk about them offensively. You got to talk about Jacob Eason first and foremost. 6'6", 227-pound junior. We all know his story. He transferred from Georgia to Washington. He's from the Washington area. Grew up just down the street from the school, and he has that NFL arm, NFL body. 6'6", 227 pounds, as I said, and the arm strength is tremendous. The ball just jumps off his hand, and effortless throws, into tight windows. Ball gets to his receiver in a hurry. Problem is he throws that fastball on every single throw. And I studied quite a few of his games. In that loss to Colorado, 20-14, had a lot of open receivers. Receivers were getting open against that CU defense. The problem was a lot of times what he was doing was, he, rather than put it with touch, he was really trying to rifle that ball in there, and he was overthrowing his receivers and overthrowing them by a lot. And he really needs to work on putting some more air under the football, throwing with more touch. And if he does that, I think he could end up possibly being the number one quarterback in next year's draft. He has that type of arm strength, and that athleticism and that potential. I remember Drew Lock when I watched him play at Missouri. He lacked a lot of touch, and I thought that was one of the things that he really developed in his game there at Missouri as he started to continue to improve as a quarterback. In his senior season was really where you saw more of that touch coming from Drew Lock, and that's really why I would love to see Jacob Eason come back for one more year, really work on that touch to his game. And obviously if he ends up going to the NFL, he has that potential. He's going to be a high draft pick. He could be a first rounder, possibly a second round pick. Won't get out of the second round in my opinion. And the thing with it is he's going to need a couple of years to really work on his game before he's going to be NFL ready. And that's really why I'd love to see him come back to UW for one more season. 63% completion percentage on the year, 22 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. He's a quarterback who trusts his arm a little bit too much at times as well. He'll try to fit the ball into some tight windows, but man, when he's got a receiver open, he puts the ball on him, in a hurry. He can be very explosive. Now, Hunter Bryant, the tight end, is number one really go-to target, 6'2", 239-pound John Mackey Award finalist, is not going to play in the bowl game, deciding instead he's going to sit out and get ready for the draft. 52 receptions, 825 yards, 3 touchdowns. I look at him. I really want to see what he's going to run in the 40 because he could end up being a potential Evan Engram type. That doesn't mean he's going to be a first-round pick, but he's definitely going to be a tight end who's going to be taken on day 2, and he could potentially be one of those guys. He's a bigger wide receiver out there. He can be split out on the outside, in the slot, as an inline tight end, line up all over the field, kind of like what Evan Engram is able to do. And I really want to see that 40 time though. How fast is this guy? Because he's able to separate. You see him running some polished routes, from the posts to the corners, the sluggos. You see him run some double moves, out and ups, sluggos. A lot of different routes in the route tree for him. And, so that's why I think he's going to be very valuable at the next level. Salvan Ahmed, the running back, 1,000-yard rusher for UW going up against the Boise State Broncos there. Left tackle Trey Adams, 6'8", 314-pound senior. I've had him up, in my top 5 at times at offensive tackle. And the more I watch him play, the more I just look at him and I say, those injuries are catching up with him. He tore his ACL, and then he came back and had a back injury as a junior. And this was a guy comes back as a redshirt senior, to have one more year at UW in Seattle. And he was a guy after his sophomore season looked like one of the more dominant tackles in college football. A knee bender, moved really well, got good depth on his kick slide, able to beat the edge rushers to the edge, uses his length to his advantage, generated a lot of movement in the running game as well. But man, those injuries, he looks flat-footed at times. I mean, there are guys that are just going around him as if he's standing still. And that's one of the things that's really concerning is, that he's late with his hands, he's late with his feet, looks to, at times to get too far over his toes, and that's going to create, some balance issues as well. I really wonder, is he going to end up having to transition and play inside because of that lack of mobility? That's really a question that I have on my mind right now. Defensively, Elijah Molden, the DB, 5'10", 190-pound junior, 3 interceptions, 12 pass breakups to his credit. And then obviously Miles Bryant, he's the leader of that secondary, 5'9", 185 pounds. In Jimmy Lake's defense, that secondary really is going to be key. And Miles Bryant is kind of the last of this group of guys. When you had the likes of Kevin King and a lot of the other DBs there at UW, and Miles Bryant, he's undersized, but I think he could be a nickel. I think he could be potentially a LaMarcus Joyner type there at the safety position as well. So it'd be interesting to see. I think he'll be a late day 3 pick, but I think he is going to get drafted and he'll get a shot at the next level. Now, Boise State, 12-1 on the year. You haven't missed a bowl game since 2000, and Boise, they've just been a model of consistency. And this year, Hank Bachmeier, the freshman, really kind of set the tone for the Broncos this season. But Jalen Henderson is really going to be the guy that's going to be starting this year, or starting the bowl game. You've got George Alani, the freshman running back, 979 yards. You've got John Hightower is going to be the number 1 target in the passing game. The receiver, 923 receiving yards. Up front, you're going to have John Molchon, the guard, who's kind of a road grader, nastiness to his game as well. He's one of those guys who could potentially get drafted late in the draft. And then there's Ezra Cleveland. He's 6'6", 310-pound junior, 39 starts to his credit. And he's started virtually every game since his freshman season. And he's a junior. He could come out And if you watch him play, he's so light on his feet. He's very nimble, and he moves effortlessly, able to mirror guys, short, choppy steps. And he's someone who I think can be one of the better pass blockers in this year's draft. The issue for me with him is his strength, his core strength, and just strength in general. He's not very powerful. He's very much a finesse player. I want to see him generate more movement in the running game. I also want to see him really sink into his pass sets. I think his pad level gets a little high at times, and because of that, he can get knocked back with a decent bull rush and get off balance, and then ultimately get beaten off the edge. And I think a lot of good pass rushers are going to take advantage of that. I think I want to see him come back one more year, get some more core strength, really add some power to his game. Take a page out of Liam Eichenberg at Notre Dame. Take a page out of his book. I think he's another guy who's light on his feet, but needs a little bit more power to his game. Ezra Cleveland, I think, could end up potentially being a first-round pick in next year's draft. This year, I think you're probably talking about, sometime in day 2, probably, a third-round pick, just because, you need to have some of that. He may end up being a second round pick, but you need to have some of that physicality to you. And I think that's what he's really lacking in his game. Defensively, how can you not talk about Boise State without first leading with Curtis Weaver, 6'3", 265-pound junior. If you listen to my podcast, you know that I love watching Curtis Weaver play. It reminds me a lot of Derek Barnett. I think the same body type and, let's see, Barnett going to the Eagles in the middle of round 1. And I think, Curtis Weaver has a chance to be a top 20 pick when it's all said and done. I don't think he gets out of the top 25, but a guy who just knows how to get after the quarterback. 19 and a half tackles for loss, 13 and a half sacks. I think he's got tremendous, core strength to be able to turn the corner, get underneath, tackle pad level, uses his hands very well. I think it's one of the things that you definitely see. I think if an offensive tackle gets his hands on Curtis Weaver, he's going to struggle to get off blocks. That's why I really want to see him, use those hands and the secondary moves. You see those. I think he's got some nice counter moves, the ability to spin move back to the inside. Uses his hands, like I said, very well. Uses the club move, rip, arm over, and a guy who just tireless worker, keeps working to the quarterback. A lot of fun to watch. Keep an eye on number 99. I think he's going to be wreaking havoc, and he's going to be the guy that's going to put pressure on Jacob Eason. And Eason, let's see what happens when Curtis Weaver gets in his face a couple of times during that game. How's he going to respond? Is he going to panic? Is he going to try to force things, or are we going to see some poise in the pocket? Are we going to see him slide, and buy some time, and then set his feet and fire a dart? That's really going to be the interesting matchup for me. And then in the secondary, Kikoa Nawahine is the guy that really leads that secondary, that senior safety, a guy who, known for playing in the box, but I think he's underrated when he drops and playing over the top. And then the corner is likely going to be covering Aaron Fuller, the receiver, the senior receiver, is Avery Williams. He's 5'9", 198 pounds, 4 interceptions, 21 pass breakups in his career. He's a guy that teams really try to shy away from because he has some pretty decent ball skills, but he is 5'9", so some of the bigger receivers there. I think Terrell Bynum could potentially be another guy that's going to be matched up with Avery Williams. That height advantage is really what is going to be concerning there. I think at the end of the day, I think Boise State, they'll play some ball control. That defense is going to play tough, but I'm going to go ahead and go Washington. Just because they're 7-5, doesn't mean that Washington. I think they're going to try to send Chris Peterson out on a high note, and I think Eason coupled with Salvon Ahmed running the football. I think opportunistic defensive backs. I think Jimmy Lake. You've got a young quarterback there for Boise State. I think he's going to make that quarterback's life miserable. Keaton Slovis, didn't get to play against Washington, but Matt Fink did. And Matt Fink, the third string quarterback there for USC, really struggled against Washington through multiple picks, 3 picks in that game, really, fooling him more often than not. So I think Jimmy Lake is going to come in with a game plan to do just that with Jalen Henderson, Hank Bachmeier, whoever's going to be playing quarterback for the Broncos. I'm going to go Washington there in the Las Vegas Bowl. Now, moving on to the New Orleans Bowl, Appalachian State and UAB. This is a sneaky good game. I think with Appalachian State, 12-1 on the year. Eli Drinkwitz is gone. He's heading to Missouri. Sean Clark is really taking over there, taking over the helm, and they went to bowl games under Scott Satterfield. Eli Drinkwitz really taking Satterfield's team and elevating their status there as a 12-1 program. And then Sean Clark's going to be the guy that's going to be taking over the at least on an interim basis. Zach Thomas, the quarterback, he's only a junior, 6'1", 210 pounds, 63% completion percentage, over 2,500 yards this year, 26 touchdowns, just 6 interceptions, 412 yards on the ground and 7 touchdowns. So he's a tremendous athlete, a guy who does a really good job extending plays, getting outside the pocket, keeping his eyes down the football field, but he also knows when to pull it and run. I think probably one of their best draft prospects on offense is only a junior, and that's Darrington Evans. He's 5'11", 200 pounds, back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons, over 1,300 yards this year, 17 touchdowns, also has 36 career receptions. Evans is someone I really enjoy watching run. I think he runs with an attitude, with purpose, has a pretty good burst on the outside, can run away from you a little bit, good vision, puts his foot in the ground, gets north and south, very decisive runner. If you haven't gotten to watch him play yet, he's one of the better group of 5 running backs in all of college football. Offensive tackle Victor Johnson is someone who's going to get a look. He has 55 starts to his credit, 6'5", 295 pounds. I think he's still raw. I think he's still learning the game a little bit. You watch him, the hand usage is a little inconsistent. The hands and the feet don't always work together, and the legs. But he's somebody who is definitely very athletic, a guy who moves very well for his size, and has, really with his frame, he could probably put on another 20 pounds and not lose any of that quickness. He's somebody who I think is going to be a day 3 pick and somebody who may end up sticking with the team because of his athleticism. Now, defensively for the Mountaineers, the top guy to keep an eye on is Akeem Davis Gaither. 6'2", 215 pounds, tremendous athlete. That's really what you look at. He's one of those new age outside linebacker safety hybrids. Just under 200 tackles in his career, 23.5 tackles for loss, 6 sacks, 13 pass breakups. Tremendous length. A guy who has sideline to sideline range, can drop into coverage a little bit. He's not going to be a guy who's going to come off the field on third downs. He's going to be someone who can play in the box, can get after the running game, and then can also drop back and cover a little bit and drop into zone coverage, read the quarterback's eyes, and make a play on the football. Jordan Fair is another linebacker he's intriguing. What's interesting about him, he's the leading tackler. Davis Gaither, number 2 tackler for the team. 6'3", 230 pounds is Fair. 96 tackles this year, 8 tackles for loss, 2.5 sacks. They say he benches 430 pounds and potentially could run sub 4.5. And so I think when you're talking about some of those numbers, the strength and the speed, you could potentially see teams really perking up and really wanting to study him a little bit more. And just from that athletic standpoint, man, you can put him on special teams and let him run around and make plays. Desmond Franklin is going to be the playmaker there in the secondary. 6 foot, 205 pounds, 8 interceptions, 17 pass breakups to his credit. Has some decent ball skills. He's going to be someone to keep an eye out on. And he could be in one of those, that opportunistic defense. They've got the 5'9" sophomore Sean Jolly, who has 5 interceptions. They're going to be getting after Tyler Johnston, who I think is going to end up being the quarterback that's starting. 58% completion percentage, 15 touchdowns, 14 interceptions. That's really going to be the big thing and the big day for Appalachian State. I think they're going to end up beating the Blazers because of that opportunistic defense really getting after Tyler Johnston. Is Spencer Brown healthy, the running back? That's going to be the big question for UAB offensively. 6 foot, 230 pounds as a junior, 1 year removed from just an explosive year. over 1,000 yards, and injuries really have kind of hurt him. And when you talk about him, when you look at him, 26 touchdowns in his first two seasons, and as a junior, just 527 yards in 11 games, five touchdowns. Um, he's a thumper between the tackles, good vision, has a decent burst to the hole. He's not going to run away from you, but he runs with power, has some good quickness to him. And then if Tyler Johnson, as far as airing the football out, he's got a receiver, a junior, Austin Watkins, 6'3", 205 pounds. He's going to be someone that could be a factor in the 2021 draft. Over 900 yards receiving, five touchdowns, 19.9 yards per reception, has good length, and a guy who is a receiving threat down the football field. UAB has one of the better defenses, and they're really just one of the better stories overall. This was a program, when you look at them, they started their program in 1996. Watson Brown took them to one bowl game. Then you had Neil Callaway, Garrick McGee, and then Bill Clark really taking over. And in 2015 and 2016, there was no team. They folded up shop. And since then, Bill Clark has taken him to a bowl game in 2017, 2018, and 2019. And really, when you look at that, that's remarkable. Watson Brown took him to the one bowl game that UAB had been in, and in the last 3 years, Bill Clark has had UAB in a bowl game every single year. And what he's done with the Blazers, bringing that football program back and making them relevant right off the bat, tremendous job. Defensively, they're being led by Chris Mole. 6'1", 215-pound safety linebacker hybrid type of guy, 93 tackles, 15 going for loss, 8 sacks, a guy who makes a lot of plays behind the line of scrimmage. And then you have the 26-year-old Garrett Marino up front, 6'2", 290 pounds. When you look at him, he's someone who's going to make some plays behind the line of scrimmage. Over 21 tackles for loss, 11 and a half sacks, 7 pass breakups, has a high motor, hasn't really made the impact this year that I was really expecting. I was expecting to really make a huge jump this year. Just haven't seen that. But UAB is one of the better teams statistically on the defensive side of the football. So I think that's what's going to make things interesting, is taking strength on strength, UAB's defense versus Appalachian State's offense. I think at the end of the day, Appalachian State's way too much firepower. I think they end up winning that game going away. It could be a sneaky good game, especially if Spencer Brown's healthy, but I still think Appalachian State is going to end up rolling in that game. Moving on to Monday, December 23rd, just a couple of days before Christmas. And you've got UCF, Central Florida, taking on Marshall in the Gasparilla Bowl. The Bad Boy Mowers Gasparilla Bowl, one of my favorite names to a bowl game this year. And UCF 9-3 on the year. After you had Scott Frost 13-0, Josh Heupel goes 12-1. And they're used to going to the big bowl games, the Peach Bowl, Fiesta Bowl. Now they're at the Gasparilla Bowl at 9-3. A lot of programs would take that, but this is kind of almost feeling like a step back for the program. Dylan Gabriel filling in as a freshman. Obviously Mackenzie Milton, with his injury, but a 6 foot, 186 pounds, freshman All-American, 59% completion percentage, over 3,300 yards passing, 27 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. He's only 6 feet tall, but he's not a guy who's really going to pull the ball and run it. His favorite target on the outside is Gabriel Davis, 6'3", 212-pound junior, 83 receptions, over 900 yards, 7 touchdowns. He's a playmaker on the outside. He's big, he's physical, he's a downfield threat. Uses his length to his advantage, gets some late separation, can win those 50-50 balls. But, the problem for Gabriel Davis, he is coming out and he's entering the draft. There are a lot of receivers that look just like him. And so how's he going to separate himself from some of these other guys? That's really what's going to be key in this pre-draft process, because, I could find 5 or 6 guys who fit that exact same mold, the big physical receivers, Gabriel Davis, I would have loved to have seen him come back one more year, work with Dylan Gabriel, and then enter the 2021 draft. This draft class this year is scary good, and having Gabriel Davis in it is obviously going to help some of that depth on day 2, day 3. But I wish he would have come back for one more year. And then they have the three-headed monster in the backfield. They've got Otis Anderson, 5'11", 174 pounds, receiver, running back, does a little bit of everything. Over 600 yards on the ground, 72 career receptions. Adrian Killens is a home run threat. He's the speedster, 5'8", 164 pounds. Very slight, but man, you put him in the open field, he's running away from anybody. Track speed. 629 yards on the ground, 70 receptions to his career, 7.2 yards per carry. And then there's Greg McCray, 5'10", 175 pounds. He's probably the guy who's going to run the ball between the tackles more often than not. 133 carries, for over 1,100 yards, 10 touchdowns, and they're going to put a lot of pressure on you running the football, which is going to open up that passing attack for Dylan Gabriel. And up front on the offensive line, the center, Jordan Johnson, is the veteran. 50 starts to his credit, 6'2", 320 pounds. He's going to get a look at the next level. Might be a late day 3 pick. Defensively for them, they've got 3 guys who are really the guys to keep an eye out for. Nate Evans, the linebacker, 6'1", 241 pounds, over 100 tackles. To lead the team. Richie Grant is the playmaker in the backfield. In the secondary. 6 foot, 194 pounds, over 100 tackles, 6 interceptions in 2018. Numbers don't quite match that in 2019, but definitely a guy that you have to be on the lookout for. He's the leader of that secondary. And then up front is Brendan Hayes, 6'3", 293 pounds. 22 and a half tackles for loss, 11 sacks in his career. He's somebody who I can potentially see as a 5 technique in a 34 defense. One of those guys who could end up possibly being a better pro than he was a college player. For Marshall, Doc Holliday. Man, the Thundering Herd, 8-4 on the year. Doc Holliday, 10 years at Marshall, been to 7 bowls, back-to-back in the Gasparilla Bowl. And when you think of them, offensively, obviously you have Isaiah Green throwing the football, 14 touchdowns, just 4 interceptions, athletic quarterback. But Brendan Knox, 6 foot, 220 pounds, sophomore running back, 1,000-yard rusher, 11 touchdowns, a guy who can be physical between the tackles, runs with a forward lean, runs through contact, very powerful runner. He's going to, I think, give UCF's defense some trouble. And then there's Xavier Gaines. Man, this guy plays a little bit of everything. Quarterback, running back, receiver, tight end, lines up all over the place. 6'2", 221-pound junior. They're going to try to get the ball in his hands in a variety of ways. Defensively, the top draft prospect is going to be Chris Jackson, the corner. 6 foot, 186 pounds, ball skills for days, 7 interceptions, 45 pass breakups to his credit. This is a guy who's a lot of fun to watch, knows what to do when he arrives at the football, attacks the catch point, does a really good job understanding routes, undercutting receivers, and making plays on the football. And then if you're looking for a linebacker, Omari Cobb has really good size, 6'4", 223 pounds, 107 tackles, 17 tackles for loss, couple of sacks to his credit as well. Flies around, plays sideline to sideline, can get north and south as well. I think UCF just has too much firepower going for them. I think UCF ends up winning that one. Moving on to Tuesday, Christmas Eve, Hawaii taking on BYU in the Hawaii Bowl. And when you think about Hawaii, they're 9-5. They went to the Mountain West Championship game, lost to Boise State. Nick Rolovich taking him to a bowl game in 3 of the last 4 years. They've actually been to the Hawaii Bowl in each of those years. And they're led by their quarterback, Cole McDonald. If you were talking about quarterback who was going to lead, be one of the guys that could be a potential first round draft pick and one of the top quarterbacks in the draft, a lot of people were talking about Cole McDonald and Jordan Love in that same conversation. He had a tremendous 2018. Everyone was expecting him to build off of that and had a rocky start. He had 14 interceptions and 8 of those were thrown in the first 3 games. Against Arizona, he throws 4 interceptions, gets benched in favor of a freshman. Chevin Cordero had to come in and finish that game out. Ends up throwing 3 picks against Washington, and also threw a pick against Oregon State. But he rebounded. He ended up with the year completing 64% of his passes, over 3,600 yards, 29 touchdowns, and as I said, 14 interceptions. He's one of those guys. He's a gunslinger, man. He's going to get outside the pocket. He's going to try to extend plays with his legs whenever he can. Keeps his eyes down the field, trying to find a play, but he's going to throw the ball, across his body over the middle late. He's going to make some ill-advised throws. He's going to try to fit the ball into some tight windows, try to throw the ball late. And he needs to work on some of his anticipation, has tremendous arm strength, can throw the football down the field 50, 60 yards. But again, he's going to have to be smart with the football if they're going to want to beat BYU. The running back, Miles Reed, 5'8", 185 pounds, over 800 yards on the ground. Not much of a factor in the passing game, though. But when you've got a pair of diminutive receivers, they're both 5'9", 175 pounds, Cedric Byrd, JoJo Ward, I think they're both going to get a look as a potential slot receiver. Teams are always looking for the next Cole Beasley. Who's going to be the next Cole Beasley? And these are two guys. When you look at what they do, each of them, Cedric Byrd, 174 receptions, over 2,000 yards, 19 touchdowns. JoJo Ward, 109 receptions, 1,840 yards, 20 touchdowns. They're both, I think JoJo Ward has had more of the splash plays, the guy who's going to get vertical on you. Cedric Byrd is one of those guys who's going to work the middle of the field. Both very sudden in and out of their breaks. I don't know if they're going to get invited to the combine, but I think their 40 times are going to be critical to their success. They are sudden with their routes. They may be faster or quicker than fast, but that's what's going to make things interesting. Then if you're looking for a guy who up front for Hawaii, how about Ilm Manning, the left tackle? A guy who I believe is still under 300 pounds, but a very easy mover, shows some pretty good power, still raw, and is going to be a developmental prospect, only a sophomore, but he's somebody to keep an eye out for up front. Defensively, I really look at their defensive backs. They don't have anybody up front who's going to get after the quarterback. They don't have anybody with more than 3 sacks on the roster, but Cortez Davis, 5'11" junior, has some pretty good ball skills, 11 pass breakups to his name. And then Rogesterman Ferris, 6'1", 180 pounds, 25 pass breakups, 4 interceptions in his career. I was really expecting him to take a big leap forward in his senior season, but he's somebody who I think he takes some chances, gets aggressive at times, eyes in the backfield, susceptible for double moves, got beat quite often, and frankly, his junior tape is better than senior year. So I think it's going to be a struggle for him to potentially get drafted. Now for BYU, 7-5 on the year. This is a team that expects to go to bowl games. I mean, they went to a bowl game in each of the 11 seasons that Bronco Mendenhall was coaching here. Kalani Sitake has taken over the helm. They had a nice upset win over USC in overtime. They're led by their sophomore quarterback, Zach Wilson. 6'3", 203 pounds, very mobile quarterback, 64% completion percentage, over 3,600 yards, 23 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. A guy who, he was a gamer, man, against USC. He was one of those guys who just willed his team to victory. When you have a guy like that at quarterback, it can make for a very special moment. And then the tight end, the junior tight end, Matt Bushman, he's going to be an NFL tight end, 6'5", 245 pounds, 119 receptions, over 1,600 yards, 9 touchdowns to his credit. This past season, 41 receptions, 597 yards, 4 touchdowns. Not the fastest guy, but he's still a weapon up the seam, and somebody who I think is still developing as a blocker, but a guy who, again, I think he's going to be an NFL tight end. I don't know if he's going to come out in this year's draft. This is kind of a weak draft class for tight ends in terms of the overall depth, but it'd be interesting to see what happens there. I think at the end of the day with this game, you can never count out Zach Wilson at quarterback, but I'm going to go with Hawaii. I think Cole McDonald and the explosiveness on offense, I think that's ultimately what's going to do in the Cougars there. So Independence Bowl, Louisiana Tech taking on Miami. Miami 6-6, fought their way to a bowl game with Manny Diaz in his first year at quarterback or I mean, at head coach, and the quarterback Jaron Williams 62% completion percentage, just over 2,000 yards, 19 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. He has to be counting his lucky star, thanking his lucky stars that he's not going to have to go up against Amik Robertson. 5'9", 183 pounds. You want to talk about a guy with ball skills. A guy, if you haven't heard of him, you haven't gotten a chance to watch a very special player. Not only does he have 184 tackles in just 3 seasons there at Louisiana Tech, but 23 tackles for loss as well. Makes plays behind the line of scrimmage, 14 interceptions, and then 34 pass breakups. He's just a guy who has a nose for the ball. He'll probably end up moving to nickel at the next level, but I think he can be one of those elite nickel corners. And man, he'll probably be a second round pick, but we could potentially be talking about him being one of the steals of the draft. And even though Robertson isn't playing, we are going to see L'Jarius Sneed, 6'1", 193 pounds. He's got some decent ball skills himself. 6 interceptions, 17 pass breakups to his credit. And he's one of those guys. He's going to be called upon to really, take on, KJ Osborne. Jeff Thomas dealing with a back injury. He's already come out and said that he's not going to be attending the bowl game because he'll be focused on the draft. 5'10", 174 pounds. And frankly, I would have loved to have seen him come back for one more year. He's a speedster. He's one of those guys who's going to get vertical. But look, you look at the numbers overall, not the most impressive in terms of numbers. 83 receptions, 1,316 yards, 8 touchdowns. Again, part of that too, though, is the quarterback play has been suspect there. He's really going to have to show. He'll probably end up getting invited to the combine. He's going to have to really impress people with his workouts. KJ Osborne, the 6', 206-pound transfer from Buffalo, in 2018, 83 receptions, over 800 yards, 892, and 7 touchdowns. 2019 comes to the Hurricanes. Quarterback play struggled. And 43 catches, just 491 yards, 5 touchdowns. But look, he's a veteran. He's a savvy route runner. Can get vertical at times. Can get behind the defense. Finds the voids in the zone. He's a very intelligent receiver. But again, deep draft class. He'll probably end up being. I'm going to guess he's going to be a 6th-round pick when it's all said and done. Brevin Jordan, the tight end, battling a foot injury. 35 catches, 495 yards, 2 touchdowns. Mackey Award finalist. He's a lot of fun to watch, and he'll be a factor in next year's draft. DJ Dallas, the running back, dislocated elbow. He's out. Junior, physical runner. I think the injury really took out any chance of him potentially coming out for the draft. So the Hurricanes going to be struggling a little bit, offensively to try to run the football. I think they're going to put some more pressure there on Jaron Williams throwing the ball. Defensively, man, when you talk about it, it seems like Shaq Quarterman and Michael Pinckney have been there forever, along with Zach McLeod. Shaq Quarterman, really the anchor of that defense, has started every game in his career with the Hurricanes. 6'1", 241 pounds, 345 tackles, over 40 tackles for loss, 12 sacks, 13 pass breakups. He's someone who plays downhill thumper style, reminds me a lot of Denzel Perryman in that regard. He gets lost at times in coverage, but I think when he drops into zone and is allowed to just spy the quarterback, read the quarterback's eyes, I think he's able to play in space a little bit more, and I think he's improved his draft stock as the games as the season's gone along, really showing out. He's leading the team in tackles yet again. Just a tremendous linebacker, and I think he's one of those guys who I think a lot of the draft prospects, that a lot of the experts are putting out on him, he'll probably end up getting drafted a little bit higher than everyone has him slated, just because he's just he's a gamer, he's intelligent, and he's durable, and he just makes plays. He's the the leader of that defense. When you think of the Hurricanes defensively, you think Shaq Quarterman. Michael Pinckney, I mentioned him earlier, 6'1", 226 pounds. He's got over 200 tackles to his credit, 42 tackles for loss, 14 and a half sacks. He's going to be an outside backer, probably a weak side backer in the league, and I think he'll have a chance. He's one of those guys. He's not very flashy, but somebody who just gets the job done. Trevin Hill, on the other hand, 6'3", 238 pounds, 29 and a half tackles for loss, 16 sacks. The transfer from Louisville got himself into trouble at Louisville. I'm sorry, at Virginia Tech. Moved on to Miami, and a guy who makes some splash plays, but I don't think you see that consistency from him. And that's really what worries me about Trevin Hill is he going to be a guy that's going to be consistently getting after the quarterback? I think that's a big question mark right now. I really don't know what you're going to see there from him. Gregory Rousseau, though, 6'6", 251-pound redshirt freshman. And you want to talk about a beast, man. 14 sacks, just tremendous length, and has a quick burst off the football. He's going to be a guy that's going to be living in the backfield and really pressuring Jamar Smith, the quarterback there. 65% completion percentage, 17 touchdowns, just 4 interceptions. He's got Justin Anderson, a 5'11", 218-pound back, who's rushed for over 900 yards and 15 touchdowns. Adrian Hardy is the receiver, the 6'2", 200-pound receiver, who's going to be leading that receiving core. I think Louisiana Tech gets it done. I think they end up beating Miami. Miami's got a ton of injuries, and I think Louisiana Tech, even without Amik Robertson on defense, I think they find a way to get it done. Pittsburgh taking on Eastern Michigan in the Quick Lane Bowl, and Pat Narduzzi, 7-5 yet again. He's taken him to a bowl in 4 out of his 5 years there with the program. Kenny Pickett, junior quarterback, 6'2", 225 pounds, and over 2,700 yards passing, but makes a lot of mistakes throwing the football as well. Doesn't always make the right decision with the football. His top target is Maurice French. He's battling a jaw injury. Don't know if he's going to be coming out or not, but he is that top target, that weapon for them. And defensively, they've got a bunch of guys in the secondary that are going to be fun to watch. You got DeMar Hamlin, the safety, 6'1", 195 pounds, just under 200 tackles in his career, 15 pass breakups to his credit as well. Dane Jackson, the corner, 6 foot, 190 pounds. Excellent ball skills, 39 pass breakups to his credit, 43 total passes defended. And then, Rashad Weaver going down to injury, 6'5", 270-pound defensive end. You really, tore his ACL before the season even began, out for the year. 6.5 sacks as a sophomore, really expecting a big year. Who was going to be the guy to put pressure on the quarterback? Stepping in is sophomore Jalen Twyman, 6'2", 290 pounds, 12 tackles for loss, 10.5 sacks to really lead them. And I think Pitt ends up getting this done against Eastern Michigan. Eastern Michigan doesn't have a guy on the roster that's going to be the Max Crosby type, but I'll give you a couple of names to watch out for. Shaq Van is the running back. 5'10", 222 pounds, over 2,000 yards, 23 touchdowns in his career. And then defensively, Brody Hoying, the safety. A guy has 10 pass breakups and 11 tackles for loss in 2018, 19 total in his career. A guy who knows how to play in opposing backfields. And look, you got to take your hat off to Chris Creighton and what he's done there at Eastern Michigan. 3 out of the 6 years, taking him to a bowl game. Really, quite impressive. Let's see. The only other bowl game that they went to since 1975, when they first were introduced to Division I, was in 1987. The 10-2 Eagles also went to the California Bowl. And so, but Chris Creighton taking him to a bowl game in three out of the last 6 years, he's going to be one of those names that before long he's going to end up getting a Power Five job. Friday, November 27th. These are the games that are really going to round out the first week of bowl action. Starts with North Carolina taking on Temple in the Military Bowl. Freshman Sam Howell really leading Mac Brown's team. And if you remember the Tar Heels 6-6 on the year, they were just a 2-point conversion away from beating Clemson, who's undefeated, snapping that undefeated streak. And who knows if Clemson would have made it to the college football playoff with that one loss. But Sam Howell, 6'1", 225 pounds, 60% completion percentage, over 3,300 yards passing, 35 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. Howell, Gabriel, Keaton Slovis, excellent quarterback play out of the freshman. You throw in Jaden Daniels there at Arizona State, some tremendous freshmen. They've got two running backs, really a two-headed monster there. The junior Michael Carter, 5'10", 200 pounds, over 900 yards on the ground. Then Javonte Williams, 5'10", 215-pound sophomore. A couple of guys that are going to pound the ball between the tackles. They've got junior Daz Newsome and Deani Brown, the sophomore, both 5'11", 190 pounds. What's crazy too is they're about the same height, same weight, and they both ended up with 947 receiving yards. Go figure. But their best draft prospect on the roster is going to be the left tackle Charlie Heck, 6'8", 315 pounds. The veteran seems like he's been a staple there up front. His footwork. He needs to work on that a little bit, but he has tremendous length, good power. Initial punch at the point of attack is something that also something to take notice of. Defensively, they've got Chaz Surratt, 6'3", 230 pounds. Was a quarterback in 2017 and 2018. Decides to move to the defensive side of the football, and man, I think he's really turned into a pro prospect. 110 tackles this year, 6 sacks, and he's somebody who's just going to continue to get better as he continues to learn the linebacker position. He's going to be the guy that's going to be putting pressure on Anthony Russo, the quarterback there for Temple. 21 touchdowns, 11 interceptions, just 58% completion percentage. When we talk about freshman quarterbacks, you also have to mention freshman running backs. Remon Davis, 5'9", 210 pounds, over 900 yards on the ground, 7 touchdowns, freshman All-American. And then the receiver, Isaiah Wright is the guy that gets all the hype, because he's 6'2", 200 pounds, athlete, a guy who can run the ball, good receiver, has 5 touchdowns in the return game, 2 kickoff returns, and 3 punts return for touchdown. But really the receiver that's going to be a breakout star is Jaden Blue, 6 foot, 185 pound sophomore, over 900 yards on 87 receptions, 4 touchdowns. He's that name. He's going to be that name to watch. But my favorite player for them is Matt Hennessy, the junior center. 34 starts to his credit. Upper body injury. He's questionable. But check this out from Pro Football Focus as a sophomore. 0.6% rate of pressures. That means 0 sacks, 2 pressures, and 329 pass blocks. I mean, that's tremendous there at the center position. He was a Remington Award finalist. That award ultimately went to Tyler Beatis. But when you look at Matt Hennessy, he's only a junior, 6'4", 295 pounds. Could he come out? I think there's a chance that he could. I've been higher than most on him. I think he's one of those guys who I think could end up having a long, sustained NFL career. Now, defensively, they've got a trio of linebackers who are a lot of fun to watch, and they're around the same size. At least 2 of them are. Sean Bradley, Chappelle Russell, both 6'1", 230 pounds. Both of them have about 230 tackles to their credit. Bradley with 22 tackles for loss. Russell with 18.5 tackles for loss. Bradley's the guy who really plays a lot behind the line of scrimmage, a guy who's going to, really be, a downhill defender, shooting into the backfield, making plays against the run. Chappelle Brown's going to be a guy, has 9 pass breakups. He's going to drop into coverage, can play in space a little bit as well. And then Sam Franklin, 6'3", 210, hybrid linebacker safety type. 188 tackles to his credit, 24 tackles for loss, 8 sacks. I think all three of those guys are, could be drafted. They're going to be day 3 guys, going to be some guys that are going to add some depth to some teams, going to be some special teams performers, special team standouts, but I think they're also guys who can end up making an NFL roster on the defensive side of the football as well. Harrison Hand, the corner, 6 foot, 192 pounds. The Baylor transfer in his first year, 3 interceptions, 5 pass breakups. But when you watch him play, you like the way that he plays. Always seems to be in phase. Always seems to be in the right place at the right time. And really, just only 5 pass breakups. But teams really weren't wanting to go his way. And then there's Quincy Roche. He's only a junior, 6'4", 235 pounds. But all he does is get after the quarterback. 38.5 tackles for loss, 26 sacks. Very explosive coming off the edge. I don't anticipate him coming out this year. He's not really the name, a name that a lot of people are really familiar with. And, you really love to see him come back, play one more year there for the Temple Owls. Rod Carey's done a tremendous job in his first year there after Matt Rule left. 8-4 there for the Temple Owls. And, I think it's going to be interesting to see what ends up happening there with Quincy Roche. Just a guy, he's been a model of consistency, living in opposing backfields, getting after the quarterback, so explosive off the football. He's going to be a guy who's going to be pressuring Sam Howell early and often. I expect Temple to end up winning this game when it's all said and done. Michigan State taking on Wake Forest in the Pinstripe Bowl. So Michigan State, you've got Mark D'Antonio. He's only missed a bowl game once in his 13 years there with the program, and 6-6. I mean, this is his 3rd year with 6 or fewer wins. And Brian Lewerke, the quarterback, 6'3", 216 pounds. 57% completion percentage in his career, 46 touchdowns, but 31 interceptions. Must cut down on the mistakes. The receiver top target is Cody White. He's a junior, 6'3", 215 pounds, big wide receiver, over 800 yards receiving. But Darrell Stewart's really going to be the guy. Is he going to be healthy? Has a leg injury that he's been battling. 6'2", 216 pound senior, a physical player. That's one of the things that I really like is he's physical. He's willing to go over the middle, make the tough catches in traffic. He's one of those guys. He's going to grind it out. May not be the fastest guy, but somebody who I think is going to be, a viable option at the next level. And then defensively, obviously, you've got Kenny Willekes, the Burlsworth Trophy winner, as the top former walk-on, 6'4", 260 pounds. He'll be a day 2 guy. Is he going to be a defensive end? Is he going to end up being an outside linebacker? I think it all kind of depends on how he tests more than anything else. But 47.5 tackles for loss, 22 sacks to his credit. Just a guy who plays nonstop motor. I've compared him to Chase Winovich at times, but he's kind of disappeared down the stretch, and that's really the biggest concern more than anything else. Is he going to be somebody who's going to be making plays game in and game out? Raekwon Williams. He's the man up front. 6'4", 303. He's the man in the middle. 28.5 tackles for loss, 11.5 sacks to his credit, 8 pass breakups. He's one of those guys when his pad level stays low, because he does, that pad level will creep up, and offensive linemen will get underneath them and really drive him off the football. But if he can keep that pad level low, he's stout at the point of attack, and he's got a good quickness, a good arm over to beat the center and shoot into the backfield. He's somebody who can pose some problems there for Wake Forest. When you look at Wake Forest, they're just riddled with injuries. Jamie Newman, their quarterback, dealing with a right leg injury. He might be out, but it sounds like he'll probably suit up and play. He's an intriguing prospect, by the way. 6'4", 230-pound junior, over 62% completion percentage. and 23 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. Also, third leading rusher, 487 yards on the ground. But his top receiver, Sage Surratt, is out. And Sage Surratt, to me, there's a chance he can end up coming out and entering the draft, but he's dealing with the shoulder injury, 6'3", 215 pounds, a guy who got vertical. And really, when Wake Forest was winning ball games and they were undefeated and ranked highly, Sage Surratt was a big reason why. He was just a guy who just couldn't be covered on the outside. So physical, and yet he was able to separate. A guy who was able to, they throw a back shoulder throw and able to adjust the football in the air. So effortless. Still over 1,000 yards through 9 games, 11 touchdowns. He'll be missed. And then you're talking about Scotty Washington, the big 6'5", 225-pound receiver out there. He's questionable as well. He struggled with his hands, though, throughout the season. Jack Frudenthal, the 6'3", 235-pound tight end. I bet you he ends up making a roster when it's all said and done, possibly on a practice squad, but 31 catches, 4 touchdowns there. He was a go-to target at times in the red zone for Jamie Newman. And then the left tackle, Justin Herron. He came off an ACL tear in the first game in 2018 against Tulane. 49 starts to his credit, 6'5", 290 pounds. You think about some of these offensive linemen. Justin School is a name that comes to mind. Who ended up going to the 49ers and then ended up starting in a pinch, one of those swing tackles. I think Justin Herron can be that same type of player. I mentioned the injuries. Justin Sternad, their inside linebacker, he was the guy who was making plays for them. 6'3", 235 pounds. Excellent instincts, makes plays behind the line of scrimmage, can also drop into coverage. One of those new age linebackers, tore his biceps after 7 games. But he's a guy who I think, 5th round range, he's someone who I think can end up making an NFL roster. They have 2 DBs that you have to really be on the lookout for, and that's something that Brian Lewerke is going to have to watch out for. Isang Bassi and Amari Henderson. Bassi's 5'10", 190 pounds. Over 200 tackles, 11.5 tackles for loss, 5 interceptions, over 40 pass breakups. Instinctive, has the ball skills, but he's one of those guys who sometimes will arrive at the football too soon. Gets a little handsy at times, panics a little bit, wants to be physical, wants to be aggressive. He's just gonna have to temper that back just a little bit. And then Amari Henderson on the other side, 6'1", 180 pounds, has more length than Bassi. Another guy with tremendous ball skills, 7 interceptions, 40 pass breakups in his career. Just a guy, model of consistency on the outside there. And then a guy getting after the quarterback is Carlos Basham Jr., Boogie Basham as he's known. 6'5", 270 pounds, 30 tackles for loss, 13.5 sacks. He's only a junior, could come back for one more year for the Demon Deacons, and I'm sure Dave Clawson would love to see that. Dave Clawson taking the Demon Deacons to 4 straight bowl games. I think he's really got something there. I'm hoping that Jamie Newman, Sage Surratt, and Boogie Basham all come back for one more year. Would really make things interesting there in Winston-Salem. Texas Bowl, you got Oklahoma State and Texas A&M. Virtual home game there for the Aggies, taking on the number 25 ranked Oklahoma State Cowboys. And the Pokes, man, they're without their freshman quarterback, Spencer Sanders. Over 2,000 yards, 16 touchdowns, 11 interceptions, had that thumb injury, but he was dynamic as a runner. Over 600 yards on the ground, really took some pressure off of Chuba Hubbard. And then Tylan Wallace, a Blitnikoff Award finalist last year, over just under 1,500 yards receiving, 12 touchdowns, 6'1", 185 pounds through 9 games. He had over 900 yards and 8 touchdowns, but tore his ACL, out for the year. Hasn't made a decision yet on what he's doing. If he comes back, he'd end up getting to play with Spencer Sanders for one more year. Chuba Hubbard, sounds like he's going to play in the bowl game. 8th in the Heisman, 6'1", 217 pounds. Like I said, 8th in the Heisman after 1,936 yards on the ground, 6.3 yards per carry, 21 touchdowns. Also had 21 receptions to his credit as well. Doak Walker Award finalist. And he's got that explosive burst. He's got that track speed. One of those guys, all he needs is a crease, and he's hitting that hole and getting downhill. Reminds me of Darrell Henderson in that respect, because all Darrell Henderson needed was a crease and he was gone. Both guys over 900 yards. Both of those guys, in the back half of the top 10 in Heisman voting. these last 2 years. The Pokes defensively have some young guys. Malcolm Rodriguez at linebacker, 94 tackles. Amen Ogbongbemiga, the 6'1", 225-pound edge rusher. 4 sacks, but 14 and a half tackles for loss. And then Colby Harville Peel is a sophomore safety, 6 foot, 215 pounds, 15 pass breakups, 5 interceptions, showing off some pretty decent ball skills there. AJ Green, a senior corner, 6'1", 190 pounds. He's a veteran with 6 interceptions and 21 pass breakups to his credit as well. He'll probably get a look at the next level. They'll be taking on A&M. Kellen Mond, the quarterback. Really, people were expecting him to take a step forward. 6'3", 217 pounds, 19 touchdowns, just 9 interceptions. Second on the team in rushing with 384 rushing yards. I thought that they had a chance against LSU. Against Alabama. And Kellen Mond, really, they had the chances, and he was just a lot of errant throws, just really was off his game. But he's got some young, talented skill position players. He's got Isaiah Spiller, the freshman running back, 6'1", 220 pounds, over 800 yards on the ground, 9 touchdowns. And then he's got Jalen Weidermeyer. You had Jace Sternberger there. Now you've got Weidermeyer, 6'5", 260 pounds. Over 400 yards receiving, 6 touchdowns to his credit as well. Defensively, you've got Justin Matabuke. The junior is not going to be playing in the bowl game, but still a guy who can make some plays behind the line of scrimmage. 24 and a half tackles for loss, 11 sacks in his career. Very athletic first step, 6'3", 306. He's someone to keep an eye out for. And then Charles Oliver and Miles Jones in the secondary, both bigger guys. Oliver 6'2", 216. Miles Jones 6'4", 185 pounds. Excellent length. Oliver 33 pass breakups, including 14 this year. Miles Jones 3 interceptions, 21 pass breakups to his credit. And I think Oklahoma State, depending on what happens with Chuba Hubbard, if he decides he wants to play in the bowl game, I think that gives them a great chance to win the game. Without Chuba Hubbard, I think A&M ends up winning this game going away. With Chuba, I think Oklahoma State ends up edging things out. And, there's a report today in the media in Oklahoma that there's a chance that Spencer Sanders is going to play in this game. And so you split time with him and Drew Brown. I wonder how effective he'll be throwing the football given that thumb injury, but I think you get that explosive playmaker there in the backfield, and things will be interesting for sure. Holiday Bowl, USC and Iowa, number 22 ranked Trojans, 8-4 on the year. The fan base is up in arms because Clay Helton's coming back for one more year. AD Mike Bone has said that Clay Helton's going to be the guy there. You'll anticipate that they'll make some changes on the defensive side of the football. Clancy Pendergast defense gave up a ton of points down the stretch, including against an undermanned UCLA team in their final game of the regular season. Graham Harrell, the offensive coordinator, really made the offense relevant, signed a multi-year deal. He'll be back. And a big reason why USC has had success is their freshman quarterback, 6'2", 200-pound Keaton Slovis. And, when you talk about efficiency, just under 72% completion percentage, over 3,200 yards, 28 touchdowns, did throw 9 picks. But, this is a kid who, he was a 3-star recruit coming out of Arizona. Kurt Warner was his quarterback coach. And the kid, the poise in the pocket, he doesn't play like a freshman. He plays like a guy, much older. And I think that's what's so impressive. The receiving core at USC is just unreal. Michael Pittman Jr., the senior, is the leader of that secondary. He's the receiving core. And Michael Pittman Jr., Blitnikoff Award finalist, 6'4", 220 pounds, 95 catches, over 1,200 yards, 11 touchdowns. That doesn't really equate to a high yards per catch average, but it was because teams would game plan against Michael Pittman. They saw what he did against Utah, over 200 yards receiving, a couple of touchdowns. So physical on the outside. He's so difficult to bring down. He wins the 50-50 balls, goes up and attacks the football in the air. and he's sneaky fast. He's so big and so physical that he doesn't look like that straight line speed. The question is he going to be able to separate? But the problem, for DBs is even if you don't separate from this guy, he finds a way to get that late separation, especially when he's leaping into the air. He has that tremendous catch radius, but then you got to try to tackle this guy. He's big, he's physical, he has a chance at the first round. I don't know that he'll end up making it, but look, the last time you had a USC receiver that I thought was legitimately, had a legitimate chance at the first round was Juju Smith-Schuster. Now, Juju Smith-Schuster did not run a great time in the 40 at the combine. He fell to the end of the second round, and you saw what he's been able to do there for the Pittsburgh Steelers as a result. Michael Pittman, I think teams will look at the physicality, his ability to make plays down the football field. The guy who wins those 50-50 balls just has a knack for making plays, a knack for being able to, the catch radius is tremendous. His body control, especially along the sideline. He has a chance to be a first rounder in my book. But the other receivers there for SC, they've got a junior in Tyler Vaughns. I think he comes back 6'2", 190, over 800 yards receiving, 6 touchdowns to his credit, over 2,300 receiving yards in his career. Sophomore Amon-Ra St. Brown is your possession guy, very sudden in and out of his breaks. I think he's quicker than he is fast, but he has a knack for getting open, a knack for finding openings in the hole, in the holes and zones. 68 catches, over 800 yards receiving. And then Drake London is a 6'5", 205-pound freakish athlete, a basketball player, over 500 yards receiving in just 7 games. But really, when you tune in and watch this game, you're going to have to watch Austin Jackson against AJ Epenesa. I want to see that matchup as much as possible. Do not line up AJ Epenesa over Drew Richmond, the right tackle. Line him up against Austin Jackson, and let's watch this thing go. Austin Jackson, I think, to me, is one of the more ascending prospects in this year's draft. 6'6", 310 pounds. He started last year at left tackle, again this year, and I think that when you look at him, I haven't seen the final stats from Pro Football Focus, but I think he only has a couple of pressures. So light on his feet. I think his pass sets have been phenomenal. He takes a proper angle with the kick slide, gets good depth, beating those guys to the edge, and really from there, he's light on his feet, able to mirror his hand usage. He's pretty accurate with his punch, delivers a good jolt. I think he needs to sustain his blocks a little bit more in the running game, but he's absolutely a pass blocker extraordinaire. And when you look at AJ Epenesa, 6'6", 280 pounds, one of the most heavily highly rated recruits there for Iowa. 34 tackles for loss, 24 sacks to his credit, 7 pass breakups, 8 forced fumbles. As a sophomore, he didn't even start. He was playing behind Parker Hesse and Anthony Nelson. 16 tackles for loss, 10.5 sacks, which led the Big Ten. As a junior, started off slow, still ended up with 9 sacks on the year as he picked up. He really started playing well and getting after the quarterback when it counted, and that was in Big Ten play. Line these two guys up, and let's see who wins the matchup. Who's going to be the guy that's really going to stand out there? Christian Welch, the linebacker, he's 6'3", 239. He makes the defense better, but this is a guy who just can't seem to stay healthy. I talked about that receiving core. You got Michael Ojemudia and Matt Hankins, a couple of guys over 6 feet tall. Ojemudia, 8 interceptions, 15 pass breakups. Matt Hankins, a couple of interceptions and 10 pass breakups to his credit as well. They'll be tasked with having to deal with that receiving core. Geno Stone is an active safety back there on the back end. Another guy to keep an eye out for. And then when Iowa has the football, you've got Nathan Stanley, who's 6'4", 243 pounds, under 60% completion percentage, does have 66 touchdowns, 23 interceptions. For me, the deep ball accuracy is inconsistent, but man, short to intermediate throws. He's got the tremendous arm strength, can make a lot of those throws, can get the ball from the left hash to the right sideline on a line. That makes those throws outside the numbers and can put it on his man, hit the receiver over the middle. It's mostly on those deep balls more than anything else. The running back duo, really, he's got a trio of running backs: Mekhi Sargent, Tyler Goodson, the freshman, and then Torrin Young, who's kind of the more of the bruiser. I think Sargent will end up probably starting, but Tyler Goodson may end up getting the bulk of the carries when it's all said and done. And then up front, man, Tristan Wirfs, that right tackle, 6'5", 322 pounds. I'm higher on him than some other people are. I think he could potentially go in the top 10, but I think he's not getting out of the top 20. He's a right tackle. He's big, he's physical, but he's also light on his feet. I think he's one of those guys who can play on the left side in a pinch, and he did so for Alaric Jackson when he went down to injury. Ultimately got exposed a little bit by some of the speed rushers, but the power is undeniable. His 450-pound hang clean that he did for 4 reps broke Brandon Sheriff's record. Now, Brandon Sheriff now is a Pro Bowler. He did the hang clean at 443 for 3 reps back in 2014. And when I watch Tristan Wirfs play, he reminds me a lot of Brandon Sheriff with the physicality, his ability to just blow a guy off the line, the powerful punch. The thing with Brandon Sheriff that he was so good at was he would just long arm a guy, just extend that arm right into the pad level and drive a guy off the football. You don't see that type of dominance from Tristan Wirfs, but you see the power, you see the athleticism, you see that punch at the point of attack, and he can sustain his blocks as well to the whistle. He's going to go up against Drake Jackson, a freshman who I think is going to have a tremendous year there, or season. Not only season, but I'm sorry, tremendous career for the Trojans. 6'4", 275, freshman All-America, 11 and a half tackles for loss, 5.5 sacks, despite being injured. Their best pro prospect may actually end up being Jay Tufele, the defensive tackle, 6'3", 305 pounds, a guy who can get after the quarterback, good quickness off the football, uses a good arm over to get into the backfield and blow up run plays. Talanoa Hufanga is their heat-seeking missile at safety, 6'1", 220 pounds. Those 3 running backs are going to be seeing Hufanga all over the line of scrimmage. A guy who just plays with reckless abandon. Really a lot of fun to watch. You know what? I'm going with the Trojans in this game. I think Keaton Slovis is going to end up airing it out. Those receivers going to have a big day. I expect Michael Pittman to have a huge day in his final game. And it's one of those things, like I said, defenses scheme to deal with him. And so what Graham Harrell tries to do is get the ball to him any way that they can. Throw a lot of those quick throws. And it's one of those things to where those receivers all block very well. And Pittman's another physical blocker on the outside, which also, really just helps his draft stock that much more. He's an unselfish player. But when he gets the ball in his hands on one of those quick throws, he gets some of that momentum going, and he'll end up turning a 2-yard throw into a 15-yard gain, and he's hit and dragging guys, and bouncing off contact, getting another 8, 9, sometimes 10 yards after contact. Just a tremendous player. I think USC ends up winning that game. And then the final game, Air Force taking on Washington State in the Cheez-It Bowl. Air Force, man, Troy Calhoun, tremendous job there at the helm for the Falcons. 12 years at the helm, and 10-2 on the year. They're not a team that's going to be throwing the ball much. Look, DJ Hammond, their quarterback, 99 attempts in his career. He's got 491 yards on the ground. I think Taven Burdo is a senior, 6'1", 220 pounds, over 1,300 yards, 12 touchdowns in his career. He's really one of the guys that I'm looking at as a potential pro prospect. I think especially at that fullback position. They've got a ball hawk in the secondary and Zane Lewis, 6'1", 190 pounds, 14 pass breakups, picked off a pass and ran it 99 yards for a touchdown as well. Let's see. And then Washington State, look, 6-6 on the year, not the type of year that they're really expecting. But look, Mike Leach, 8 years there in Wazoo, 6 years taking him to a bowl game, including 5 straight. And after Gardner Minshew, what was who's going to take over at quarterback? It was ultimately Anthony Gordon, the backup to Gardner Minshew there. Finally waited out his turn. 6'3", 210 pounds, 72% completion percentage, over 5,000 yards, 45 touchdowns, just 16 interceptions. He's not I wouldn't say that he's necessarily quite the passer that Gardner Minshew was, but at the same time, he made a lot of difficult throws, very accurate in Mike Leach's system and spread the ball around very well to a lot of different targets, a lot of different players. Um, 6 receivers over 500 yards, plus Aesop Winston and Brandon Arconato went over 900 yards. Spread the ball around, and he's going to get a look. He may get drafted late, and you never count out a Mike Leach quarterback. And then, if you want to talk about a running back that we're going to be talking about quite a bit in next year's draft, it's Max Borghi, 5'10", 197-pound sophomore, and his 134 receptions since the start of 2018 is the most by a running back. It's just astonishing to see what he's been able to accomplish in a short period of time as a wide receiver coming out of the backfield. And Max Borghi is going to be fun to watch. I think at the end of the day, Air Force just won't have the weapons to deal with this passing attack by Mike Leach in the Palouse. And ultimately, I think Washington State ends up winning the Cheez-It Bowl. So there you have it. The first 17 bowls of the college bowl season. Breaking those down, taking a look at some of the matchups. We're going to go ahead and do this all over again in just a couple of days. Break down the remaining bowl games. Stay tuned. We'll go ahead and bring the rest of those to you. But until then, enjoy a few bowl games this weekend. We've got a full slate of them, and we'll put one more together. I've got a vacation coming up, so I'll be out in California December 22nd through the 30th. So I won't have any podcasts breaking down any of the bowl game results during that time. But give me a couple of weeks. I'll get another podcast out. But I definitely want to make sure that I'm breaking down each of these bowl games before they all kick off. So on Saturday, I'll get another podcast release that'll break down the remaining bowl games. We'll take a look at all those matchups, especially the college football playoff. We'll take a look at OU versus LSU and Clemson versus Ohio State and what the college football national championship might look like and what those matchups might be. So until next episode, enjoy yourselves. Take care. This is Gregg Schutze for ReadyForTheDraft.com. This has been the Ready for the Draft podcast. I am out of here. Take care, everyone.